I've always been a fan of horror stories, so when my friends talked about the abandoned library downtown, I had to see for myself if it was as creepy as they said. It was one of those old, eerie buildings that everyone avoids. The windows were all broken, and the paint was peeling. The walls were cracked and moldy, everything falling apart. The library was truly frightening. They told me strange things happened there at night, and since I'm a bit of a daredevil, I decided to go there after dark. Don't judge me. At the time, I was just a kid looking for a thrill and didn't really think about the consequences of my actions. I arrived around 11 p.m. It was quite dark, and the only light came from a street lamp that flickered occasionally. The silence was heavy, only broken by the sound of my own footsteps on the pavement. I felt like I was in a horror movie, and the atmosphere was perfect for it. The library door was unlocked, just as everyone had said. With a push, it opened with a sinister creak. I entered and was greeted by total darkness. I used my phone's flashlight to light the way. The smell of mold and dust was everywhere. The shelves were still full of old books, and the place felt like a maze. As I walked through the narrow aisles, I wondered how many scary stories those books could tell. The floor creaked with every step, and the sound echoed off the walls. I couldn't see much beyond the beam of my flashlight. The shadows danced on the walls, and I could almost feel the place breathing. I found a large reading room, with old tables and chairs covered in dust. I decided to check out some of the books. There were all sorts, from novels to science books, all left behind and forgotten. I picked up a random book, just to see what it was, and a puff of dust made me sneeze. At that moment, I heard a strange noise. It sounded like a whisper, but there was no one else there but me. I was alone, or so I thought. But then the sound came back, louder this time. It seemed to be coming from one of the reading rooms. Being the curious person I am, I followed the sound. With each step I took, the noise grew louder, until I finally reached the door of a small reading room. I pushed the door slowly and looked inside. There was no one there. The room was empty, yet the sound was still there, as if someone were whispering from beyond. I approached the table in the center of the room and saw an open book. The pages were turning by themselves, as if someone was reading it. I froze on the spot. I'm not easily scared, but that night left me on edge. I felt a chill run down my spine and a sense of being watched. I turned to leave, but the door I had left open was now shut. I started to hear footsteps in the hallway, coming toward me. They were slow, heavy steps. My heart began to race. Who or what was coming? I decided to face the situation. I opened the door slowly and stepped into the hallway. My phone's flashlight began to flicker, flashing intermittently. And then I saw it. At the end of the hallway, a dark figure. It was tall, with a silhouette that I couldn't quite make out. It seemed to be watching me. I froze, not knowing what to do. My legs turned to jelly, paralyzed. The figure began to move toward me slowly. I felt a growing panic inside me. I tried to take a few steps back but stumbled and almost fell. When I looked again, the figure was closer, as if it had crossed the hallway in an instant. Without thinking twice, I turned and ran. I ran like never before. I ran desperately, searching for an exit. The hallways seemed to stretch on forever, and every time I looked back, it felt like the figure was closer. Finally, I found the exit door and threw myself against it. It burst open with a crash, and I ran out into the street, breathing heavily. When I looked back, the door was closed and everything was silent. I stood there, trying to process what had just happened. I was alone on the deserted street. The library seemed so normal, so harmless from the outside. But I knew that inside, something was wrong, something beyond what I could explain. I decided that would be my last adventure in abandoned places. Some stories are better left in the books. The next morning, I told my friends the story. They laughed in my face and said I must have imagined everything. But I know what I saw and felt. And since that day, I have never been near that library or that street again. Some things are better left behind.